Now, there are lots of tools for filing down the bamboo. You can use sandpaper, you can use scraping knives, but I personally prefer this one. It has a scraper on this end, and it has a file, and this is what I mostly use. Also has a file on this edge as well. The indigo dye that transfers over to the bamboo is a good indication of which parts are getting the most wear. So you want to file those places down. And obviously, if you're striking correctly, then most of your wear and tear is going to be on the monouchi, which is from here to the nakui, where the nakui is. So this is where you need to take care of the bamboo the most. Now, if you ever discover a split in the bamboo, a very large crack, where a large chunk is going to come out of the bamboo, then that pretty much means that you need to replace this particular stuff of the bamboo. Now, after you've filed down all the wear and tear and made sure there aren't any major cracks, then each time you should oil the Shinai, and for that I like to put on a pair of work gloves because I don't want to get my hands greasy all the time. And I have an oiled cloth so that I don't have to re-soak it every time. I keep it in a little Ziploc bag like this. It's an old sock. And over the years I've tried all different kinds of things, vegetable oil. They even sell Shinai oil specifically made for this, but that tends to get a bit expensive. It's hard to find in the US, outside of Japan. So over the years, through trial and error, I've found that the best thing is mineral oil. And you can find this at any hardware store. This one is used to preserve chopping blocks and things like that, or wood furniture. And it doesn't get rancid like vegetable oil does. Doesn't smell. I've heard some people using Pam, but that tends to get rancid pretty quickly. So over the years I found that this is the best solution. And the thing about oiling the Shinai is you should oil the insides as well. And in fact the insides, because it's unfinished, the insides will absorb the oil better than the outside. And as you can see, I'm keeping the Sukagawa, the handle, on the Shinai as I do this. It just helps to keep everything in place. I don't have to fumble around with each individual staff. And generally speaking, you don't really need to oil down all the way down to the bottom. as you oil your Shinai, you will also found that it has the added benefit, cosmetic benefit of removing some of that indigo dye that is rubbed off. After you're done with that, wipe off the excess with a old rag. So after you're done cleaning the individual staves, you want to consider rotating the handle. Now, some sensei will tell you that because the Shinai bends in a certain direction, as you strike an opponent, that you shouldn't rotate your Shinai. Because if it bends the other way, if you rotate it so that this is currently the blade, and then you rotate it so that this becomes the blade, then because it's flexing the other way, that will put new stress on the bamboo so that it will break easier. And I haven't found that to be the case myself, but if your sensei tells you to do it that way, then by all means keep the Shinai in one direction at all times. But for wear and tear, I've just found it better to rotate the Shinai every once in a while, so that if this was your blade, maybe you want to turn it to this way. Okay, so for that, you need to rotate the handle. Okay, some handles will slip off easily, others will not. This is a piece of rubber that you can use to pull it off. If you don't have one of these, you can use thick rubber gloves, dishwashing gloves that you can find at any drugstore, and that'll help you get a nice grip and pull it off. Once you pull it off, I'm going to determine which side I would like my blade to be. This looks like a good side. So rotate your handle accordingly. And then you gotta squeeze it. Pull the suka onto the Shinai tightly. I personally do it vertically for that. Stand it up vertically and then pull down on it. Okay, now we're going to reassemble the Shinai. You need the piece that fits at the top. It's called the sakigomo. And even though it's not really made out of rubber anymore, most ones are made out of plastic, they still call it gomu, which means rubber. Okay, for this type of sukagawa, there are two loops. They go through both loops. And this one has a leather part for the upper loop. And then you come back down to this loop. Now you can pull it tight here to tighten the string, but if you pull it tight here, it'll come loose again. So here's a little trick. Loop it around partially. You're eventually going to need this to wind the string anyway. So now you get those pliers, and then you tighten it. And then you can take up the excess this way. And it won't come loose. Now to wind the string around, I like to use a pen just to create a little gap. You can use your suba. Just keep going around. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. About 7 or 8 times is good. Now you get the central string, put it underneath, and then it goes through this loop. So that it'll be a self-locking knot. Okay, and then pull that tight. If this piece is too long, you need to cut it with a pair of scissors. Or I'm just going to tuck this underneath. The main thing is it should look nice and neat. Like that. Now you have to retie the nakui. Some strings come with a knot right there. You don't really need that. In fact, as the string stretches, this will stretch down towards the handle. So I actually find it to be unnecessary, if not actually a bit of a hindrance. But you want this monouchi, right? The striking part, to be about 1/4 of the entire length of the shinai. So from here to here should be 1/4 of the entire length of the shinai. So wrap it around. Let me do that again. Wrap it around. And this is where a lot of people have trouble. You have to make it tight each time you go around. Another time. Then another time, right? So you have 3 lengths, 3 strands, and then you go under and through this loop that you just made. And make that nice and tight. You don't want to wait until the end to tighten it. You want to tighten it nice and tight, each individual turn. Then it goes under again, and again through that loop. nice and tight. Then under again, and then through that loop. Nice and tight. Then under again, and that final loop. Like that. This is where the pair of long nose pliers comes in handy again. Hold that last loop. Give it a nice tightening. You don't want to over tighten the string, but it should have a nice snap to it. If it's too loose, the Shinai will feel kind of dead in your hands. It won't have a lively snap to it. So this tension is very important. So finally, if you want to write your name on your Shinai, I mean, it's a useful thing if you go to competitions and you lose your Shinai, that's not a good thing. So if you want to write your name on your Shinai, the traditional thing is to put it on the omote side of the Shinai. The left side, as you look from the top down, the left side is the omote side of the Shinai. Omote is the outside. And the reason that's called the outside is because when you wore your katana, it would be reversed like this, with the edge facing up and the handle sticking out. And so your name would be on the outside of your body. That's why it's called omote. And this is the side where the sword makers would put their names. If the sword maker was going to sign the tang of the sword, he would inscribe his name on the omote side. So that's why traditionally you put your name on the omote side of the Shinai. Generally in the middle of the hand.